Let's start with the big story, which, of course, what happened in East Palestine, Ohio, being called the worst environmental disaster in American history. Those are the words coming from a number of scientists over the past 24 hours. The federal government, though, and the Biden administration largely ignoring this story.
Yes.
By the way, this is what... So J.D. Vance, of course, is the new senator from Ohio. Both senators are there, but the Biden administration is basically non-existent. A few EPA lackeys are there, but other than that, Biden's not there. Buttigieg is not there. The
Norfolk
NTSB.
Southern didn't show up to town meetings. They're just, releasing statements. They're only speaking through press releases and saying, well, we have another fund. We have another way for you to get in touch with us to get reimbursed for certain things. We're really helping the victims, but not in person. Nobody is willing to actually go there.
So J.D. Vance is a senator. He's the new senator from Ohio, and he's there, and he's showing you what this water looks like. Should this water look like this? Watch.
Hey guys, so I'm here at Leslie Run, and there's dead worms and dead fish all throughout this water. So, something I just discovered is that if you scrape the creek bed, it's like chemical is coming out of the ground. Can you come here? And let me just show this to people. I don't know if you're going to see this on the camera, but watch this. Just see that chemical pop out of the creek. This is disgusting. And the fact that we have not cleaned up the train crash, the fact that these chemicals are still seeping in the ground is an insult to the people who live in East Palestine. Do not forget these people. We've got to keep applying pressure. That's how we're going to fix this problem. Thank you.
So the New York Times published a piece today basically saying, hey, there are over 1,000 derailments a year. Like, we shouldn't really be paying much. Come on, let's just put this in perspective. Okay. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was just going to say, it shocks me that they're still walking around that area with no mask. Like, they have no idea what the long-term effects of the gases that could still be in the air could be. And they're just walking around there without masks I don't think masks would help in that situation, but that kind of concerns me that they just seem to not care that the air could
David
still
wants
be
masks
bad.
now.
Yeah, no, David's suddenly pro-mask.
I think the word you're looking for is respirator.
Respirator,
yes, respirator.
Yeah, we've talked to some doctors who've said I wouldn't be in that area without a military grade respirator mask in that situation. You just simply don't know. And we're going to speak to Nick Sortor, who's there in East Palestine, and there's no kids around. Like, the kids are gone, thankfully, and people have left and don't think that they're ever going to come back.
Yeah, you worry about taking showers from, any kind of public utility water, especially because your skin is the largest organ in your body. What is it going to absorb into your system? Not just what you drink or what you breathe, but what gets in contact with you. We spoke last week about how many government failures are all sort of rolled into this one major disaster, but I thought we'd recap. First of all, just a reminder that the Biden administration passed legislation in December to not allow rail workers to strike. Remember this? Here's the tweet from President Biden saying, I'm calling on Congress to pass legislation immediately to adopt this tentative agreement, because a rail shutdown would devastate our economy. Without freight rail, many U.S. industries would shut down. He says, I'm a pro-labor president. I'm reluctant to override the ratification procedures and views of those who voted against the agreement. But in this case, where the economic impact of a shutdown would hurt millions, I believe Congress must use its powers to adopt this deal. So this is what he was saying, is that I believe in strikes. He voted against it when he was a senator, but he passed legislation to take this out of their hands. We can't blame Biden for this entirely. This was happening 30 years ago under President Bush in 1991. Congress passed a late night bill. Remember, this is from the New York Times when they had to wake up President Bush at 1 a.m. Here's the article from April of 1991. Where Mr. Bush had to be awakened in the residential headquarters of the White House in order to sign a bill to prevent union workers from striking. The union workers said they wanted to strike because of pay and working conditions, but they also wanted to protest something called precision scheduled railroading, which has been a technique that companies use to focus on longer and heavier trains, which would lead to bigger disasters when they happen. So this is a big question. It's a lingering question. If rail workers had been able to protest this, would this have been so bad? Would this have stopped?
Well, there's a lot of safety questions, right? Because by cutting those hours, you're also reducing the amount of time that you're checking the tracks to see if there are any aberrations or problems
Yes.
on the tracks. That time is now reduced or almost eliminated.
Yes.
So, and that we've heard right from the mouth of railway workers on that specific point.
Yes. Another government failure here is that the rail company responsible for this, Norfolk Southern, was obviously not in cahoots with the Environmental Protection Agency like they claim to be. There was no consensus or full disclosure to residents when they were told that it was safe to go back. I refer you to Tuesday's show for that discussion so we don't repeat ourselves. And the fact that lobbyists removed legislation that would have kept toxic chemicals from going through heavily populated civilian areas before that actually was a rule. Lobbyists they worked hard to pressure many presidencies. They've been at work for many presidencies for the profit, in the pursuit of profit. Actually, lobbyists were able to pressure both the Trump and Obama administrations to repeal safety measures. Here's a good summary, I thought, today. The Obama administration in 2014 proposed improving safety regulations for trains carrying petroleum and other hazardous materials. However, after industry pressure, the final measure ended up narrowly focused on the transport of crude oil and exempting trains carrying other combustible materials, including the chemicals involved in this weekend's disaster. Then in 2017, after rail donors delivered more than $6 million to GOP candidates, the Trump administration, backed by rail lobbyists and Senate Republicans, rescinded part of that rule, aimed at making better braking systems widespread on the nation's rails. Specifically, regulators killed provisions requiring rail cars carrying hazardous flammable material to be equipped with electronic braking systems to stop trains more quickly than conventional air brakes. In fact, Norfolk Southern had previously touted this technology for its potential to reduce train stopping distances by as much as 60%. Over conventional brake systems. But the lobby company nevertheless pressed for the rule's repeal, telling regulators that it would impose tremendous costs without providing offsetting safety benefits. And this argument won out with Trump officials, and the Biden administration has not moved to reinstate the brake rule or expand the kinds of trains subjected to tougher safety regulations. So you can see now, I've gone back 5 presidents. I've gone Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, right? They are all, none of them blameless. No party, no president.
No, they're all bought off by these guys. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? So they're all bought off by these guys. And we had a chance to speak with Nick Sordor, who is a video journalist. He's been in East Palestine now for a number of days. He was literally, I think, the first video journalist on the field there, and unbelievable sights and sounds that he saw there, choking, not being able to breathe properly, and just talking to local residents. So we caught up with him today as it started to snow in that area. And by the way, what's in that snow? Can you imagine the precipitation in that area, for crying out loud? So we had a chance to speak with Nick Sordor just a short time ago, and here's what he had to say. Watch. Well, we want to go down to Nick Sordor, who's been in East Palestine, Ohio for a number of days now, one of the first video journalists there on the scene when the major media outlets won't even cover the story. And now it seems like social media is maybe moving the needle in the right direction for people to get answers. Nick has been there for a few days, and he joined us a few days ago. Nick, what has changed in the few days since you've been there talking to the people and seeing maybe the federal response or lack thereof? What have you seen?
So the pressure campaign that we started mounting once I got here on Tuesday has really boosted the hopes and morale of a lot of the residents here. At the time when I had gotten here, no cameras, no media, nothing. There's nobody here. The only journalist here walking around talking to people at the time. And then I started getting a lot of engagement on social media, trying to tell people what was going on the ground. And they got concerned because, what I had seen before this through the media, and kudos to you, you were the first person to pick up on me while I was here. And once I had gotten here, I didn't know what to expect because the media hadn't been covering it for, the 11 days before. They were worried about the balloons or whatever. I got here, and as soon as I got here, I could tell that it was much worse than anything that I had heard. The air quality was terrible. I was choking, my eye watering. And, you know, a lot of people here were experiencing the same things. And they were having issues with some of them with their lungs. People that have lung problems were having a really tough time with it. Nobody trusted anything the government had told them up until that point. The federal government was like nowhere to be found. But after this pressure campaign, they actually started sending people out here just to, you know, the Biden administration sent out the EPA administrator, and both U.S. senators came yesterday. Why the EPA administrator didn't bother coming out to the worst environmental disaster in recent American history until Twitter blew up and independent journalists started really pushing it is beyond me. And that should tell you a lot about, you know, what the people here are feeling.
What are the people telling you now? We know there was a town hall last night. Are they frustrated? They're being told, sounds like multiple stories, both from the Pete Buttigieg side, from the EPA, from the NTSB, from Norfolk Southern. It seems like they can't get straight answers from anybody.
Right. You're absolutely right. Mike Ryan in particular, his story changes every day, seemingly. The other day, or last week especially, when he had declared that it was safe to come back in to the area here. That's exactly what he told people. So people came in, they came back in. A lot of them didn't want to, they were forced to anyway. And then he comes out, I believe 2 days ago, and says that, oh, well, maybe you should be drinking bottled water, which is totally contradictory from going last week and saying that everything was perfectly safe. Then you come out today and he says, oh, well, you know, everything is perfectly fine. You know, tests indicate that there's nothing in the water at all. Okay, you got to make up your mind. What are you going off of? How do you keep going back and forth on that? That is what makes people not trust the government here, and that's why they're scared. There are people here that are taking showers with bottled water.
Jeez,
you know, which is just crazy.
Yeah,
because they can't get no straight story.
And I've heard you, in fact, offered the EPA administrator a glass of water, right? You offered him a glass of water because he'd been out kind of walking around all day. And you said, why don't you have some tap water? And what did he say to you?
Yep. He shook his head like this, you know, just sort of like it was definitely a no. So he declined the water. He definitely didn't want to talk to me. We'll say that much.
Unbelievable. Have you noticed a lot of people coming back to their homes, or are they still staying away?
There's the people that can stay away are staying away. I have seen very few children in this town at all.
Wow.
You know, even at the town hall, you had, 900 people there, and you know, no kids were there. I haven't seen kids in the street playing, not a single time actually.
Wow.
So, and that's disturbing to me. They're doing everything they can to not expose their kids to me.
Well, I know you've been working so hard there, and I know we've got kind of a choppy signal because you're dealing with Wi-Fi and terrible cell coverage in that area, so I really appreciate it. I wanted to see if it's possible, I know you're right near the creek bed there, if we could just pick up your camera and maybe walk down live here.
I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I was just asking you maybe if you could grab your camera here before we go and see if we can just walk down to the creek bed. I know where you're seeing some of the chemicals in the water there. Can you show us what you see? We might lose your signal. We're going to try this live here and see what happens here. If you're just able to walk with your camera and see what we can find in that creek that's down there and see if we can see any trouble spots down there. If you're able to do that.
This is exactly where that video that a lot of people actually about 12.6 million people have seen. So it's right here in this creek, and all I got to do is toss it right in the water. And then you see almost instantly, you know, how, it oils up. There's chemicals all over. You can see the pools of coming over here as well. And it might be a little hard to see with the glare, but I'll go over here and it's worse. That was a small rock, and it pulls all of these chemicals out of here. You've got these barriers, right, that are supposed to be blocking this stuff out. They're not effective at all. And they've been trying to cover this up now They didn't want us to know this. They know this. There's no way they don't know this. All it takes is to toss a small rock in the water, and you discover all of these chemicals in it.
Unbelievable. Well, Nick, thank you so much for your coverage there. Thank you for what you're doing, bringing awareness to this story, arguably one of the worst disasters in American history. We'll see what the Biden administration does with FEMA, if there's more pressure from Congress on that side. Stay safe there. Thank you so much, and we'll check back with you soon as the story unfolds. Thanks so much, Nick. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Clayton. Appreciate you covering it as well.
Thank you. So thanks to Nick for what he's been doing there. And, he was saying that, people are taking showers with bottled water because they're just really concerned, obviously, about that. And we also see here, if you want to, Phil, take this, Rebel News reporting. Rebel News is there also now. Oops, sorry. I have that connected. Maybe you could take it up while we...
All right. So at this point, there has been no federal or FEMA response. And you can see how it would be much easier if you're the federal government to respond to things that are, you think are sort of out of your control or existential crisis. Like, oh, there's a big hurricane. Sure, the president will go. Oh, there's a big earthquake. The president will go because these are forces outside of our control. But when there are things to answer for, there's no politicians there to answer for it. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so Rebel News reporting that there are these devices scattered throughout East Palestine, these like air quality devices. There's now a class action lawsuit saying that there's long-term health implications with exposure to vinyl chloride, rare forms of liver cancer, other types of liver cancer, brain and lung cancers, lymphoma, and leukemia as well. And according to Zero Hedge, saying that in this lawsuit that that East Palestine residents may already be undergoing DNA mutations, according to the class action lawsuit. So. And we know what lawsuits, right? Let's just be fair here about what lawsuits can allege, right? Lawsuits in initial complaints can say a whole lot of bullshit, right?
Sure.
Let's be totally frank about that, right? So we don't want to be alarmist in that at all. But that's what first of all, you're putting a class action lawsuit together. That is a massive undertaking. And the amount of time, attention, and effort it takes to put something like that together, to level those types of charges, though, that's pretty big.
Yes, and they all have to have been harmed in the same way by the same incident.
Right.
And so there's a clear pivot point on what they were harmed from, what kind of negligence could be proved. And again, if the company can prove, like the data we were showing you on Tuesday, I believe, that, look, if we hadn't let it out in this way, the whole town could have blown up and we would have no plaintiffs at all. They wouldn't be here. Then that's something, right? And if residents can see that, we don't know how this could actually play out in a court of law. There were already 4 class action lawsuits by Tuesday. So now this next one.
Lawyers don't waste any time, do they?
Well, then could you do me a favor really quick, Clayton?
Sorry.
Sorry.
You're both gone.
I was just going to say, could you please run the clip of Pete Buttigieg and like what he's said about all this?
We
Like,
are
could
going
you
to
just
get
run
to that. Yeah.
Oh, there is actually a clip. I was trying to be funny because I didn't think there was one.
Oh no, we're gonna get to the calls for Pete Buttigieg to say words. We actually don't have any.
Okay.
You're right.
We don't have anything.
We don't have sound from him. We have a discussion about
him
not saying
Okay.
anything. Yeah.
Sorry, Philip.
Good point.
No, that's okay. I was just going to make the comparison. You look at something like a story like the Aaron Brockovich story, where it's like with the people having the poison in their water. This is like that company was trying to be secretive about it. This company literally burnt the chemical in town.
Yeah.
And right. So it's like they know, they have the point source. Everybody knows about it. So you'd think that would like help spirit the class action lawsuit along, but also knowing how the court system works, it still won't.
No.
And it's just
it'll drag on for a long time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of blame to go around on this, of course, and there's no federal or FEMA response. Here's what the White House, though, is saying about this. So Jean-Pierre was asked specifically about this. Listen.
I'm the UK administrator who's visiting East Palestine today. I was wondering, the Ohio governor was talking about efforts to federal support, said that they still have not gotten an indication from FEMA that they could get support at this point. What are the hurdles there that you guys see on the administration side?
So The governor, as you mentioned today, asked for additional public health testing and assessments. We're deploying teams from HHS and the CDC now. As you all know, these needs are much more expansive than what FEMA can meet. And so FEMA is on the front lines when there is a hurricane or tornado. As you know, you've seen the president visit devastated areas across the country. This situation is very different. And so that doesn't mean FEMA isn't supporting response. They indeed are. This is a multiple agency response that are folks that are involved, agency that are involved, as I just mentioned, HHS, CDC, EPA as well. And they are coordinating with the Emergency Operations Center and working closely with the Ohio Emergency Management Agency. Each federal agency has its own unique role here, and we've mobilized an interagency team to get the people of Palestine, of East Palestine to be more exact, the support that they need. And look, our priority, as I said 2 days ago, is the health and safety of the community. That is indeed our top priority for the moment as we look at what they're dealing with in Ohio.
Just one more on that.
Okay. FEMA can't meet that need. You know what? FEMA is pretty good. I've seen footage. They can bring water bottles.
Yeah. They can bring water. They can bring temporary
know how
housing.
To do that.
Like if your house is totally filled with chemicals. Let's listen now as we listen to the residents of East Palestine describe what it's like going back to their house and trying to open up a door and cleaning out. Like if their door, it's freezing, it's winter, right? So you don't have windows open anyway. So how's this stuff in the house? Listen to how these residents are describing going to the hospital, what they're experiencing going back into their houses. Watch.
Are you experiencing any symptoms?
A little lightheaded, and my lips did get all tingly yesterday when we went to clean up the house. It smells terrible up around the house, and there is black residue on the pictures, surface stuff.
I hit a cloud of something down in there that it put me in. I went to the hospital. They was worried about me having I've been so stressed out. They put me on an EKG thinking I'm going to have a freaking heart attack because of my stress being so high. I want to know what I sucked in.
I just feel like when I'm outside and the wind's blowing, try not to breathe in too heavily. After about 15, 20 minutes, my throat felt like there was gravel in it. I mean, it was just, I had a sore throat since then.
I vomit within 10 minutes of being in that home. The air is still terrible, absolutely terrible. I will not take my children in there because of that. Yeah. Burning of the eyes, trouble breathing. And then I just get nauseous within 10 minutes. My husband popped in to try to get anything, phone charger, things that they say are safe. You cannot get the smell out. It does not come out. My kids' friends said they lost cats. Their pets have been, sick. And then we have kids' friends who have rashes, and my daughter was one that also had a real bad, it looks almost like a sunburn.
EPA is letting us, giving us or not giving us any numbers. So they're just saying that the air is clean. We know, we've heard that before, 9/11. The water was fine in Flint, Michigan, different things. So that is in the back of your head.
They told me they were going to do an air quality test. Never got a call back. 3 times, 3 different agents from that number said they were coming to do an air quality test.
If I could, I would definitely move.
I'm old. I'm not ready to die, but I hope I don't have any after effects is what worries me.
A lot of white people there. Maybe that's what the Biden administration is staying away. Pete Buttigieg is not really concerned about that whole town of white people doesn't fit into his diversity plan.
What are you saying? It's a racist response?
Well, I think clearly this is not in their wheelhouse. Like if this was Chicago or if this was New York City, they'd be all over this. But because it's it's flyover country for them, they don't care. And you're just watching this response unfold in this way. I mean, how else can you describe it? You're literally not showing up, not putting in the resources that you would need to help these people,
right? Because
they're
Flint,
not your
Michigan,
voters.
and Flint water, which disproportionately affected Black people, became a campaign talking point.
Of course,
I mean, we really care about disenfranchised Black voters,
right?
So Pete Buttigieg, so we can't be shown to be compassionate to white people. Is what you're saying?
The thing. Like one thing to point out though is so likely this gas is more dense than air, and because of that, it can't just float up into the atmosphere and clear itself out. The air will actually hold it at that level, at ground level, which means like this, it's not just gonna like I mean, it will eventually like clear out, but it's going to linger for a long time.
Oh.
Yeah, and this is the prop. So when they're saying that this could be one of the worst ecological disasters in American history, they're not being glib. They're not being alarmist. They're saying we don't know the level to. And by the way, Norfolk Southern is also, according to reports, fudging these results. They're in charge of their own testing. That's like putting Pfizer in charge of like, vaccine trials. Oh wait.
Yeah.
Oh wait. Wonder how that goes.
Well, and also they have no idea how far out it goes either. Like it was airborne for some time. So how far did that smoke plume go? Like it could be hundreds of miles from there. I mean, I saw reports of 100 miles of fish being dead and stuff.
Well, we're hearing people in our chat right now who have family at 20 miles away from East Palestine who have been writing in our chat tonight saying they have friends in Lisbon, Ohio, and other spots that are where their animals have died. Families have been sick as a result of it.
How far do you think your hometown of Reading, Pennsylvania is?
Oh, I mean,
there?
I was,
because it's not far from Pittsburgh.
4.5 hour drive from Pittsburgh was where my hometown was. So it's far. But yeah, you don't know where the wind goes. You don't know how it affects the waters. I mean, so anyway, the problem is that these people just don't know. They're not getting straight answers. So on the one hand, there's like, no, don't, it's not safe. And the next thing they're like, yeah, drink the water. Now they're saying, now don't drink the water. Here's, you should get bottled water. It's like, and you're going to bring your kids back to this to go back to school. It's not like everyone can just pick up and move. Like they've got like bags of money that they can just like, oh, fine, I'll just move to another. I'll just go buy a house over there.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Vedger just sent a super chat saying U.S. government doesn't even have the economic resources to fix the East Palestine incident's aftermath, but they are fully prepared to go into a full-out World War III with China and Russia. Let that make sense.
Right. What's Philip trying to say?
Well, I was going to say the thing is they could absolutely know how bad it is. They could find out exactly how far it stretches if they sent people out there to gather the data. So the fact that they're not sending people out there to gather the data, to me, looks like what they're doing is they're waiting for most of it to clear out before they go out and get the numbers so that they can justify the fact that they said it's already safe.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of like it's a way of sweeping it under the rug. Because if you have the hard data, then people can point to the hard data, and that makes it look like they botched the job. So the best way to handle that on their part is just to not show up until everything's mostly cleared out anyway.
So but you said this earlier, President Biden is going to be supporting, announced today they're going to be supporting Ukrainian pensions.
Oh, yes.
So let's listen to this.
Okay.
Here, I have this here. If we can take this on my laptop.
Assistance as well as food, water, medicine, shelter, and other aid to Ukrainians displaced by Russia's war, and provide aid for those seeking refuge in other countries from Ukraine. It's also going to help schools and hospitals open. It's going to allow pensions and social support to be paid to the Ukrainian people so they have something in their pocket. It's also going to provide critical resources to address food shortages around the globe and to deliver much needed humanitarian assistance.
Pensions, he says. Now, I want you to recall recently that the federal government has said that they think they can pay out Social Security pensions for the foreseeable future, but they may have to stop paying survivor benefits. So let's say you stayed home in order to support your husband to go to work, and then you are living on a survivor benefit because he has since passed. Screw you, you don't get that anymore. He's gone, right? Your survivor benefit may just go away because the United States cannot support it, but they have decided that they can support Ukrainian pensions because that government is imploding and they can't support their own pensions. Does that seem right to you?
Is that really?
No, well,
yeah.
I guess what needs to happen is, since Putin already increased our gas prices, if Putin would just attack the United States, invade here, then maybe people would get their pensions and keep their Social Security, because then the American people would need the money.
Yeah, then we'd mobilize.
Perhaps. Now, White House spokesperson Jean-Pierre was asked about Governor DeWine of Ohio. He has said, yeah, we're there, we're working on it. He's putting out statements as well on Twitter. He's not physically there, but he's saying words. I think this was a pretty relevant response to his tweet. He's saying, I spoke with the White House early this morning to address the need for federal help. As a result of this conversation, I've requested assistance from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and all of these people that she did say were coming. I thought this response was fair. How is it that the guy who gave Ohio a nonsense 10 p.m. COVID curfew total response thus far has just to tell us to drink more bottled water. So, he was all in on COVIDism, as if COVID stopped at 10 p.m. You needed to go home at 10 p.m. But about this, he's just calling in departments, acronyms and initialisms of the federal government, but not there himself. There was an emotional town meeting on Wednesday. No one from Norfolk Southern showed up. Here's the town meeting where people just, you can see, have their hand in the air. Lots of questions, no answers. What Norfolk Southern did say was that it would create another $1 million fund to help the community of some 4,700 people while continuing to remediate the work, including removing spilled contaminants. It will also expand how many residents can be reimbursed for their evacuation costs, covering this entire village and surrounding, because they did tell them to get out for just a few short days while they said the explosion will be loud and visible. So where they went, how did that cost money, gas money, maybe hotel money. You couldn't cook at home, eating out. Meanwhile, there was another Norfolk Southern trail derailment in the Detroit area, although we are told that there was no hazardous materials in this train.
But if it's Detroit, so they'll be all over that to make sure they take care of that immediately. Meanwhile, where is Pete Buttigieg? That's the question. And Marco Rubio says, what more do you need as an example to have a guy be impeached or fired? This guy should be kicked out of office immediately. Here's what Senator Marco Rubio said about Pete Buttigieg. Watch.
And I don't know what the guy needs to do to get fired, because he's been asleep at the switch, no pun intended, his entire time in office. Whether it's meltdowns at the FAA, whether it's what happened with Southwest Airlines, now this derailment of toxic chemicals. But his job is to make sure that not only is our system of transportation in this country reliable, but that it is safe.
So there you go. Will Mayor Pete be the one that falls on the sword? Will he be the one that the Biden administration says, yeah, he's the scapegoat? They'll push him out, and that'll be the one.
He wasn't watching the trains.
Yeah.
The trains don't run on time.
Train spotting. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.